All right, gang. JPEGMAFIA just dropped his latest album a couple days ago. I've been listening to it. I was gonna do a review for it, but I realized I don't really have much to say about it. It would probably be a very short review, probably just be me restating the same things over and over. And I thought that would be a little bit lame, so I got a better idea. And I don't expect this video to be very long either, but I think it'll be a little bit longer than a review for that album would be, and it'll probably be a little bit more interesting because I'm not going to be talking about quality of albums today necessarily. I mean, that's going to be included in the criteria, but it's a little bit more specifically how much each JPEGMAFIA album would scare women if you played it around them, particularly for like the first time that you meet them, you know, because I think if you're in a long-lasting relationship with someone, you can probably show them what music you like, and they're either gonna fuck with it or they're not. It's not really gonna be a big deal. But I mean, like, particularly, this is like a first date, like you're driving them around somewhere, and you put on one of JPEGMAFIA's albums. Not something that I would recommend doing for any of them, really. But we're gonna be ranking them based on how bad it would be, like the comparative severity of each one. So yeah, we're just gonna get right into it. So for the tiers here, I have the bottom tier, which is I kind of fuck with this. That's basically the only like good tier where it's like actually something that they enjoy and they're probably willing to listen to it again. Not saying it's impossible for any girl to like listening to JPEGMAFIA, but just for like general, you know, just kind of like going over the general scope of things, like what's the most likely outcome. Not very many of them, if any, are going to be going into this tier, but I have to have it here anyway, just because, you know, we got to have the whole spectrum covered. Anyway, the next up is This Is Fine. This is kind of like an acceptable tier. Like, it's not terrible. Like, I can kind of sit here and listen to it. I'm not gonna like ask you to turn it off, but it's definitely not something that I would put on myself. Again, probably not too many of them are gonna end up in this tier because they're probably gonna be a little bit worse, but still gotta have all ends of the spectrum covered, like I said. Anyway, moving up from that, I have Can You Just Put On Some SZA or Something. So this is gonna be for like, they're not necessarily like pissed at you for putting it on. They kind of respect your taste, but they're not really into it themselves. They kind of want you to just put on something a little bit more mainstream. I didn't put that there as like a diss to SZA or anything. I love SZA, but that was just kind of the first like mainstream artist that I thought of, kind of like easy to listen to. Like nobody's gonna hate it if you put on SZA, you know what I mean? So they're just kind of like, you know, maybe they don't really like the deep cuts in your playlist. They kind of just want to listen to something smooth, kind of relaxing, just kind of like a vibe setter, not really like, you know, something as attention grabby or as weird as JPEGMAFIA. So that's what that tier is for. Moving up one more tier, I have Boy, What the Fuck Are We Listening To? This is when they are like actually genuinely upset at the fact that you've put on this garbage. They are like probably considering just ending the date right here because it's so bad. They've never heard anything like it. They never want to hear anything like it again. And yeah, this is just generally not a good situation for you to be in as a man. And then at the absolute very top tier here, we have Please Don't Hurt Me. So this is a bit of a step up above pissed, and this is when they're actually like scared. So yeah, the term like scaring the hose or whatever doesn't generally mean like actual fear. It kind of just means like they don't like it. But this is for like actual fear. Like if you put this on in front of them, they're probably gonna want to like let me out of the car right now. Like I'm going home. Like I don't know how many of the albums are gonna end up in that tier, but I thought it was necessary. Gotta have all ends of the spectrum covered, like I said. Anyway, we're just gonna go in order of when they came out here. So yeah, all right. So yeah, the first album that I am including on this list is Communist Slow Jams, released in 2015. Now, a lot of you may not have even heard about this album. Some of you may have heard of it, you may have not listened to it. Some of you may have listened to it once or twice. It's not really something you come back to. That's the group that I personally reside in. I don't really be listening to it very often. Partly because it's not on streaming services, but also partly just because I don't find it super entertaining. Save for like maybe a couple tracks, but even then, like there's nothing on it that I really find super interesting. It's not one of his more out there projects, production wise. A lot of it is honestly kind of like cloud rap esque, which you'd think would be something that I like because I'm a very big fan of that genre. Um, I don't know. I just don't think he really pulls it off that well. He's not really, it's not like as smooth to listen to as somebody like A$AP Rocky. And I think Peggy has been able to do the cloud rap sounds better before and after this album. I don't really know what it is about this album. I just kind of don't really think it's that good, to be honest with you. What I would say makes it stand out the most in his discography, other than just the fact that it's the first thing he released under the name JPEGMAFIA, is sort of how radicalized a lot of the lyrics are, which when I say that out loud, it probably doesn't sound like it would be a standout in his discography because that's kind of something that he's known for. But I would say if you haven't listened to this album yet and you think his music is radicalized, you should definitely check it out because some of it was very shocking to me. Not that I think he's like wrong to do it or anything. Obviously, I believe in freedom of speech. He has the right to say whatever he wants. He has the right to vent out his anger in any way that he wants. In terms of how women receive it, though, on a first date, probably not very well. I think this is very much, well, for one thing, it's too political. Even if they agree with the politics, it's a little bit too much like, I don't think they would like you being so direct with it, putting on something that's, talking so directly and so like violently about his politics. Again, even if they agree with it, it's not necessarily like a good vibe setter. Not to mention, some of the tracks on here are like almost direct disses to liberal white women. So, assuming you're on a date with a liberal white woman, they might not take too kindly to that. Although, to be fair, a lot of liberals are kind of self-hating a bit. So maybe, maybe they'd be like, yeah, I agree, fuck white people, but I don't know. Something just a little bit off-putting about it. Like, I respect his ability, or not ability, well, his ability and his right to say whatever he wants to say, so long as he's not going out and acting on it and actually doing the things that he's saying. While I was listening to this album, though, I was kind of questioning it. I wasn't exactly sure if he was doing it in real life or not. Like, that's how brutal it gets lyrically on this thing. Yeah, most of the album kind of just sounds like the musings of the Unabomber, or maybe just like any kind of terrorist, maybe not the Unabomber specifically. But yeah, and honestly, it gets a little bit scary. So I don't think I'm gonna put it quite in the top tier, but I think I'm gonna put Communist Slow Jams in the boy, what the fuck are we listening to tier. Yeah, I definitely would not recommend putting this on in front of the Hus. So the next album on the list is Black Ben Carson. And let me tell you, it's not getting any more accessible from here. This was, for the longest time, what I thought was his first album. I didn't even know about Devon Hendrix. And then even after I found out about Devon Hendrix, I still didn't know that Communist Slow Jams existed. So for the longest time, I thought this was like the first ever JPEGMAFIA project. And, oh boy, I mean, it wasn't the first thing that I listened to, which is probably a good thing. I wouldn't recommend getting someone into his work listening to this. I mean, and that's usually something I recommend. Like, if you want to get into an artist, probably just start from the beginning. JPEGMAFIA is one of those cases where I think this, you can appreciate it a lot more looking back on it rather than starting with it. And I like this album a lot. I know it's not like one of his, not like a fan favorite or anything, but I think it's got mostly good tracks on it. And I really like the sort of like industrial, kind of like heavy machinery sound that it has going for it. Even though it's the album that he disses Death Grips on, it kind of sounds the most like Death Grips out of any of his albums, really. So yeah, I mean, I fuck with Ben Carson. I listen to it definitely a lot more than most people do. In this context, though, I would argue it's one of the worst, if not the worst, album to play around women because of that. Sort of everything that I said lyrically about Communist Slow Jams probably also applies to Ben Carson. And then you have the sort of noisy production where the beats aren't really, they don't use too many instruments other than drums. It's mostly just like sound effects, which I think is really cool. A lot of people would probably not think is as cool, and maybe they would just think it sounds horrible. And I'm not trying to, by the way, the point of this video is not to like gatekeep or anything, to be like, I'm just so much smarter, I'm just such a better music listener because I like experimental stuff. That's not what the point of this video is. Obviously, if you like it, I love it, and I recommend that everyone check out his music just to see if they like it. But I think just, this is sort of just talking about the general consensus. I think most people would probably not fuck with Ben Carson. I mean, I have a friend actually who, I don't know if it was like the first time he was seeing a girl, but it was like the first or second time, and he put on I Just Killed a Cop, Now I'm Horny. I don't know what he was thinking, bro, but like that could not have gone over well. I think I would rather eat my own foot than be in the room when that happened, because that might be like the worst song you could possibly play in any context ever, let alone in front of a girl that you just met. Like, oh boy. And then there's some songs on here that I think are a little bit more sort of approachable, like the 27 Club. I think is kind of like a fan favorite from this album. Like, for a lot of people, it's probably the only one that they come back to. It's got a nice sort of catchy beat to it. It's not really like, blasting your ears as much. And then 2015 was a great year. It might be my favorite song on the whole thing. I mean, that one is like a super sort of nostalgic kind of sound to it. I don't know. I think, there are definitely a lot of people out there that appreciate that. I haven't found one that likes that song as much as I do. Yeah, I personally think that song is very good, and definitely not one of his like wilder songs out there. But then again, on the same album, you have something like All Caps No Spaces, Digital Blackface, Face Down, Ass Up, fucking Cuck. Like, all these songs I think are, great. Well, actually, Cuck isn't really that great, but all the other songs I think are pretty good. Oh, You Think You Know? That's another banger. I love that one. I love the title track. Dude, Motor Mouth. Like, these are all songs that I enjoy quite a bit, but putting them on a first date would definitely not be ideal. And I think, mostly just because of Digital Blackface and I Just Killed a Cop, Now I'm Horny. I think those are the main reasons why I'm going to have to put this in the Please Don't Hurt Me category. Yeah, honestly, I was considering putting it in the tier below it, but I think it deserves to be in the top tier, because I can honestly imagine someone being genuinely scared for their life if I started, playing that in the car, and then I was looking at them like, you fuck with this? You fuck with this? You fuck with my playlist? No, bro, she don't fuck with your playlist. Anyway, moving on from here, we have the Second Amendment. Now, this is, out of all of his albums, the one that I've listened to by far the least. It is a collab album with Freaky. And honestly, as I went back to listen to it for the purposes of this video, I enjoyed it quite a bit, honestly. It might be something that I will end up going back to more often. I really think it's very rough. It's very gritty, very bassy. The song I'm Gonna Vote for Donald Trump is one of my most played JPEGMAFIA songs. Ironically, because I know I just said I don't listen to the album very much, but that song I've listened to I didn't even know it was on this album. I thought it was just a single. So that's why I didn't really go back to the album very often. It's also the only one that's on streaming services, unfortunately. But yeah, this one is kind of better than Ben Carson. Not quality wise, but like in terms of like playing it on a first date, I don't think it would be as bad. It definitely sounds more like music. But again, just the whole radicalization, you know what I mean? Like, his first three albums are just so politically charged, and he's so upfront and violent with his politics. which again, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I just think in this particular context, it's definitely not ideal. I mean, the album is literally named after the amendment that allows you to bear arms. I'm pretty sure. Let me look that up, actually. I'm like 99% sure that's the Second Amendment. Okay, yes. The Second Amendment is the amendment that allows you to carry firearms. So, yeah, and then he's got like tracks on here where he's talking about killing politicians and whatnot. And it's just like, it's not really something that people want to listen to on like a casual basis. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, me personally, I don't mind it, even though I, wholeheartedly believe in nonviolence. Violence as a concept doesn't really faze me that much. I guess I'm just so dark and edgy, just so twisted. My mind's fucked up and desensitized to everything. No, not like that. But hearing it in music, it doesn't really bother me that much. But I think if it was someone that I just met and it's music that I had never heard of before, it would be pretty scary to me to hear that. And yeah, honestly, I don't really have too much else to say about this album. I think it's going in the Please Don't Hurt Me tier as well. But below Black Ben Carson. It's not going above Black Ben Carson. That, I think, is probably his scariest album to date. But it is going to go in the top tier as well. Moving on from that, we have his 2018 release. Probably most people's first album they listen to from him. And that is going to be Veteran. Now, I'm going to just come right out and say it. This is the best one so far to play in front of the Hives. I'm not saying it's a great one, but out of the ones we've gone through so far, this is definitely the best one. I mean, this was really the thing that made him so much more popular than he was for a reason. You know what I mean? There are definitely some of his most accessible songs are on this thing. He even starts like singing a little bit on a couple of them. And overall, I think this is kind of the album where he started to sound the most like JPEGMAFIA. You know what I mean? Like, going back to the ones before this, if you've already listened to Veteran to Experimental Rap, all of those albums, and then you listen to the ones before it, you're going to be shocked because it doesn't, it kind of sounds like him, but it's just very, very different. And I think Veteran is when he really started to like sort of find the sound that he wanted to do, find the persona that he wanted to have. It's just a lot more direct. And that kind of results in, I think, it being a lot more accessible because it's less like chaotic. It's a lot more polished. And I mean, it's definitely chaotic, but it's more like the chaos doesn't seem like throwing shit at a wall. It's kind of like, it's almost like he finds the beauty in the chaos. He finds the rhythm in the chaos because it's very like meticulously put together. You know what I mean? Like Black Ben Carson, for example, is not as meticulously thought out, I think, as Veteran. He's kind of just like throwing shit at a wall and just playing random sound effects and seeing what works. And like I said, I like that, but I think the Veteran, like I said at the beginning, the quality of the album being sort of part of the criteria here, I think Veteran would be an easier album to listen to. Even the sort of wilder tracks on it, like, say, Baby I'm Bleeding, or the second track that I'm not going to say the name of because it's the N-word. Something like, those tracks, I think would be easier for someone to get into because they sound like actual music. They definitely sound like weird music, but they still sound like rap music. It's not like completely unhinged, off the walls, And then, like I said, he starts like singing on some of them. Rainbow Six, he starts singing on. I could have sworn there was more tracks than that he sung on, but I can't think of any. DD Form 214 has singers on it. I don't think it's him, but it has singers. I Can't Fucking Wait Till Morrissey Dies is another one that I think you could put someone on to him with. Even though it's kind of like shorter than I think a lot of people are probably used to. But in terms of like sound wise, it's nothing like crazy. You know what I mean? Like it sounds very like sparkly and sort of, and the name is hilarious. You know what I mean? If you're like sort of, I mean, I guess if you're a conservative or you love Morrissey, you probably don't think it's hilarious. But if you're smart, you probably do think it's hilarious because Morrissey fucking sucks. Yeah, I just think overall this album just really is probably one of his most accessible ones today. And I think that might be surprising for some people to hear because a lot of people will say that this is like a lot of like very gatekeepy people will say that this is like one of the weirdest albums they ever listened to, and it's just like it's not even like top 5 weirdness in his catalog. Well, I don't know what the top 5 is going to be. I'm not done with the tier list yet, but like just in terms of JPEG Mafia, even just him in particular, this is not one of the weirdest things he's ever made. I think you could put this on in the car, and people are not really going to be that crazy about it, but they're also not going to be like, get me the fuck out of here right now. So you know what? I'm putting this in. Can you just put on some SZA or something? I think that's a fair enough tier for veteran, because I don't think anybody's going to be jumping out of the car to get away from it. They'll probably ask you to put something else on though. Maybe they'll be like, I respect your taste, but let's just not really let's not do that right now. The next one on the list is All My Heroes Are Cornballs. Most known for being the one where he started to do a lot more singing. Like I said, he did it a little bit on Veteran, but this is really the one where he kind of got more in touch with his feminine side. Went for a lot more like melodic sounding songs rather than like hard hitting, just like hardcore rap. And you'd think that would result in one of his more accessible albums. And it does result in one of his more accessible albums, but I do think people overstate just how accessible this album is overall. I would say it's still pretty weird. It's not something that I would ever really want to put on in front of people that I don't know, especially not girls. What I will say though is that if I did have to put on an album from him in that situation, this would be one of my first picks, because this has, a lot of his most singing on it, a lot of his softest sounding songs, even though a lot of the time the softness is contrasted by like a really hard hitting beat switch, kind of like on the intro track, Jesus Forgive Me, I'm a Thought. Some of them are soft all the way through though, like Free the Frail, I think is definitely one of his most catchy, one of his most soothing, relaxing, easy to listen to songs. Thought Tactics as well, potentially, although that, a lot of these songs kind of have like weird sort of like off-kilter melodies, but I think just by the fact that they are singing and, the instrumental doesn't sound like super crazy, I think they are automatically like more listenable, even though they aren't, as mainstream sounding as, it's not like it's a Drake song or anything, but it definitely, I think, would be easier to listen to something like Free the Frail or Grimy Waifu. That's another really good one. That's one that I've been getting into a lot more recently. Another one is Dot's Freestyle Remix. I don't see a lot of people talking about that one, but I really, really like the instrumental on that one. It's just a remix of a freestyle he did. I think it was for like a Kenny Beats thing. Like he made like a hardcore rap beat and he rapped over it, and then he just used the same like verse, but then he put it over an instrumental that was like completely different. I really like the instrumental on Dot's freestyle remix. Yeah, there are a couple other songs on this album that I could name that would fit this purpose, but I think overall still it's definitely not like the best thing to put on, because you still have songs like Jesus Forgive Me, I Am a Thought. You have like Keenan versus Kel. The title track, All My Heroes Are Cornballs, has one of the weirdest beats he's ever made. It's also one of my favorite songs he's ever made. But yeah, it sounds like super out there. I don't even know like how he made that shit. So yeah, overall, not like the easiest album to listen to of all time, but definitely in his catalog, I think it's a standout as something that I think, you could probably kind of just have in the background, and I don't think anybody's really going to question it that much. So for that reason, I'm going to put All My Heroes Are Cornballs in This Is Fine. And I think maybe there's even a couple tracks on there that if you played them individually, they might be into and might want to like come back to themselves. Free the Frail is really the one that I'm thinking of specifically there. Anyway, next up we're going to be doing a bit of a speed round, because I'm not only going to be covering his album LP, but I'm also going to be covering the 2 EPs that he released leading up to LP. Yeah, I'm not going to spend too much time talking about either one. I'm kind of just going to go over both of them really quickly right here, because I wanted them to be included on this. Yeah, EP I would say is probably the least interesting out of this collective sort of 3 here, this group of tracks that he's doing with the sort of, I don't even know if there's like a specific sound that he's trying to capture with all these. I kind of just grouped them together because all the track titles are all caps and then they have an exclamation point at the end. That's kind of the only thing that connects them all together completely. But yeah, out of these three, EP is definitely the least interesting to me. It does have Bald on it, which is good. It also has the Bald remix featuring Denzel Curry, which is not good. I don't like Denzel Curry on that song at all. I think it's way better without him. And that's my hot take. I'm standing by it. I would much rather listen to the original. Yeah, there are a couple other songs on there that I think are pretty good. I mean, Cutie Pie is all right. Bodyguard is all right. I really like Rough 7. Actually, that's probably what I should have said first, other than Bald, because that's actually probably the one that I listen to the most. Living Single is pretty good as well. Other than that, though, I'm not like super crazy about this thing, and I don't think it's like super out there inaccessible. Like it's not one of his most experimental things. I just think most people will probably not fuck with it that much just because it's not really doing much. I think it mostly serves its purpose as sort of like a lead up to the album. Like I said, like it's kind of, it's not really supposed to be that impressive on its own. But yeah, surprise, surprise, it's not that impressive on its own. EP2 though, I've actually surprisingly found myself coming back to a lot, even though I think I could say a lot of the same things about it, that it's not really supposed to be like a monumental moment in his career or anything. It's just kind of like a lead up to LP. Ultimately, though, I think a lot of the tracks on here are really catchy. I think it has a lot more of like a cohesive sort of vibe. Like he's not really like trying as many different things, which ultimately on his main albums I like when he tries a lot of different things, but on his EPs I think I prefer EP2 because it's a lot more consistent. And he sticks with kind of a similar sound all throughout. I mean, it's really catchy. It's got a lot of his best auto-tune vocals on it, I think. The trumpets on a lot of the beats are really good, especially Last Dance. And yeah, there's just a lot more hits than misses on this thing. So anyway, plugging these into the tier list. EP, I think I'm just going to put in, can you just put on some SZA or something? But EP2, call it wishful thinking, call it whatever you want, but I'm going to put it in I kind of fuck with this. I can honestly see someone like getting down with that. You know what I mean? Because it's really not that weird or out there. I think ultimately the only thing that would be wrong with it is that it might leave them wanting a little bit more because it's just so short of an EP. But then if you show them the rest of their catalog, they're probably just gonna be like, what the hell is this? Whereas I want more of that. I don't know. I don't want all this experimental shit. But yeah, I'm gonna put EP2 and I kind of fuck with this. Call me biased, call me optimistic, tell me I'm just doing it because I want to fill out every tier on the list. What the fuck ever. It's what I believe. It's my opinion. I'm putting it there. All right, now we're moving on to the full album that those two EPs were leading up to, LP. And by the way, by LP, I mean offline. I'm only going to be talking about offline here because it's better. It's a more complete experience. It's got all the songs on it. It's got all the samples on it. It's just ultimately a better album to listen to, I think. It's got everything there. It's more complete, right? But anyway, regardless of what version you're talking about, most people would agree this is his most accessible project. Probably the best one to try to use to put someone on. And yeah, I can't really disagree with that. It's got definitely his least weird songs on it, although it does have a couple. But most of his songs definitely sound like, sort of more like mainstream appeal. And ironically, it's kind of what I appreciate about this album the most. It used to not be one of my favorites, but now it's actually become like one of my favorites, like probably like top 2 in his catalog for me. And I used to not like that much because I used to just think of him as the experimental guy. It wasn't really something that I wanted from him. I wanted like only weird music from him, but I think I was just being a little closed-minded because the point of the album is kind of just to prove that he can do mainstream appeal as well. And I think he proves it very well because, Hazard Duty Pay, obviously being the biggest example, that song blew up because it appeals to a lot of people and it's an amazing sample flip, amazing rapping. It's just an amazing rap song overall, And yeah, I think, most rap fans will probably, and by the way, for this whole video, I'm assuming that the women you're showing this to are hip-hop fans, at least a little bit, because if they just hate rap altogether, they're definitely not going to like JPEGMAFIA. But yeah, I think if you're a rap fan, you can probably appreciate at least one or two of the songs on here. But chances are you're going to enjoy the majority of them because it's very well produced, very well performed. Just ultimately one of the best solo rap albums of the entire decade. It's just really fucking good. It does have a couple weird songs on it though. Namely, Nemo is kind of like this like glitch hop sort of thing. I'm not really sure like what it's about. Even I don't really care for that song. I think it's definitely a skip. There's also OG, Nice, BMT, Damn Damn Damn. You know, all those are kind of like, you know, they're sort of experimental, but they're also like not really the best things that he's ever done in the experimental sort of area, right? So those are all like definitely the weak points of the album for me. I don't really care for God Don't Like Ugly either. Overall though, I think that the average rap fan is going to enjoy the majority of this album. It's very, very solid. It does have my favorite song that he's ever put out on it, The Ghost of Ranking Dread. That song is fucking awesome. And if you don't like it, I respect your opinion, but you're wrong. Anyway, putting this into the tier list. Honestly, before I got to this point, I was thinking I'll put it in This Is Fine, but honestly, I think I'm going to do a little bit more wishful thinking, and I'm probably going to put it in I Kind of Fuck With This. I think I am. I haven't showed it to someone that disliked it yet. And ultimately, I think it's just about choosing the right tracks, which is kind of, I think someone could probably do a bit of choosing the right tracks from any of these albums and make them seem listenable. But I think this one has a lot more to choose from. So yeah, I'm going to put it in I Kind of Fuck With This. I think chances are people will enjoy this album if you show it to them, at least a little bit. They'll at least respect it. Anyway, it's time for the moment we've all been waiting for. It's time for the album whose name basically inspired the whole concept of this video, Scaring the Hoes. Boy, does this album do its name justice. This thing is absolutely unlistenable at first. I did not like this at first. I think I already said this, but this was the first album I ever listened to from him. It had just came out, and my friend who was really into Peggy was like, you should listen to this. So I did, and I was like, this is terrible. I don't understand how this is even music. But yeah, then I had that whole kind of character arc, sort of musical character arc. And I realized that there's actually a lot to love about this thing. And again, this is not like a review type video, so I'm not going to go in depth about like everything that I love about it. But what I will say is that it did get a lot of sort of more widespread play than his other albums. At least I noticed a lot more people talking about this album than others, especially like right before I Lay Down My Life For You, which came out the year after. I feel like a lot of people in preparation for that album went back and listened to Scaring the Hoes, and I feel like that was getting a lot of attention. I saw a lot of people talking about it. So I don't necessarily want to put it like super high just because of that, just because like I think because there is so much to appreciate in there that's like hidden in the chaos. You know what I mean? I think it's entirely possible that a woman could recognize that as well and maybe not think it's the worst thing in the world. I guess what I'm trying to say is that the name of the album is kind of like making fun of itself a bit. Like it's not necessarily intentionally setting out to isolate a fan base. It's obviously going to do that, and it definitely is some of his most out there shit, but it's also like weirdly accessible too. I don't even know how to explain it really, but it's almost like it's making fun of itself by calling itself Scaring the Hoes, so you would expect it to be bad music because it would scare the hoes, but it's actually ironically good, unironically. None of that made sense. I don't know how to explain it in any other way, but like it basically like that's how I view this album. Like it's a joke album, and the joke is that it's actually good, even though you wouldn't expect it to be. I don't know. And obviously it's the joke doesn't really apply very much to his actual core fan base that's like been following him for a long time because they already like him. But like for people that have never heard of him before, I think the intent was for them to listen to this album expecting it to be terrible. But like they heard a bunch of reviewers talking about it saying it's awesome. So they're like, well, I guess I'll check it out. And they're like, wow, I have no idea what's happening, but I kind of love it. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of what they expected the listener's experience to be like going to this album. And I might be completely off the mark with that analysis. Maybe that wasn't their intention at all. Maybe it actually was supposed to isolate fans. But just based off of the amount of like critical acclaim that it got and how much more attention it brought to JPEGMAFIA, that's kind of my thoughts on it. Although, ironically, this is actually one of the only albums that I have like experienced showing to other people. I mean, I've showed offline to other people, but other than that, it's only just like a couple tracks off of some albums. But yeah, I actually played Scaring the Hose in front of some girls once at my school, and they were like, "What the fuck are we listening to right now?" So I think just based off that, I might have to put it in the "Boy, what the fuck are we listening to" tier. But again, keep in mind the context in which I'm ranking these. We're talking about like a first date here, someone that you're not super familiar with yet. I mean, maybe you met once or twice, but like this is really the first time you're actually starting to get to know them. And so the music that you play for them is almost like an extension of your personality at this point. In that context, I am willing to put it that high. But I do think that, generally speaking, later on in a relationship, I think with the right wording, you could probably convince someone that there is value in this album that they might not realize at the first listen, because it is kind of like self-aware irony in a way. And I think, you know, a lot of the production is really impressive, and there's some really good rapping on it as well. But yeah, I'm not going to be able to put it any lower than that tier. We're getting close to the end here. We're getting close to the end, and I know because I remember exactly where I was when all three of these last albums dropped. The next one that we're going to be talking about is I Laid On My Life For You. It came out in 2024. This came out basically right before my senior year of high school started. And I listened to it on a Discord call with all my friends, and a lot of them didn't really care for it that much. I didn't really care for it that much either, so I don't know why I kind of blamed it on them when I also didn't care for it that much. But going back to it, it's definitely become one of my favorites, and it seems to be kind of like a fan favorite as well, because it's kind of like Scaring the Hose. It's been getting him a lot of sort of attention, sort of like acclaim after it came out. And that's for a good reason. It's got some of his smoothest production and some of the most emotional depth that he's had in his songs since All My Heroes Are Cornballs. Arguably more so in both of those categories than anything on All My Heroes Are Cornballs. When he's got songs like Either On or Off the Drugs, Loop It and Leave It, Don't Put Anything on the Bible, I Recovered From This, I'll Be Right There. You know, it's really no surprise that this album has gotten as good of reception as it has, because those are some of the most accessible songs that he's put out in his whole career. There's something that, you know, there's songs that are very easy to get into, even if you don't really know him that well as an artist. Weirdly enough, though, it seems like even the songs that I would expect to be less accessible have gotten the same sort of reception. Something like Sin Miedo is something that I thought was kind of weird when I first heard it. I wasn't really fucking with it that much, but I've yet to meet someone that doesn't like that song, other than people that just hate JPEGMAFIA entirely. But yeah, in a lot of ways, this album, at least for the purposes of this video, it's kind of an anomaly. I'm not really sure where I want to put it, just because I feel like it should go a whole tier above where, you know, critical evidence has proven that it actually should go. You know what I mean? Just because, like, the reception that it's gotten has proven that my prediction for it was wrong. Like, I wouldn't have said that it would be received the way that it did. Even with the songs that I mentioned in mind, just like the majority of the album, you know, doesn't really seem like something that people would be into. But not only are people really into it, it's kind of gotten them into JPEGMAFIA as an artist, which is probably the most impressive thing about it to me personally. By the way, I don't think I've mentioned this yet, but I'm actually wearing JPEGMAFIA merch right now. Yeah, I thought now would be a good time to bring it up because I got this while he was on tour for this album. Actually, my dad got it for me, but it was from this tour, so yeah, it's pretty cool. It's probably one of the best shirts that I own. I'm not a very fashionable person. Anyway, yeah, I'm not exactly 100% sure where I want to put this, because just based off of my predictions, I wouldn't say that many people would be into this, but based off of experience, it seems like a lot of people are. So just because of that, I'm probably going to put this in This Is Fine. And I'm probably going to put it below All My Heroes Are Cornballs, because it's kind of like, it's like almost, I kind of fuck with this, but then, you know, you have things like It's Dark and Hell Is High, which I think, you know, kind of inexcusable. New Black History as well. But yeah. Also, this fucking album with Flume, I don't even know why I put this on here, low-key. This is going in, boy, what the fuck are we listening to? Not even because it's super experimental, just because it's, like, mid. I don't know why. Like, nobody's listening to that shit. I don't even know why it's on here. Anyway, it's time. It's finally time for the last album of this video. His most recent one that he dropped a couple days ago, Experimental Rap. The irony of that name has already been called out 1,000 times. It's one of his least experimental albums to date. That being said, though, I still do not think it would be good to play around the Huz under any circumstances, because it's only non-experimental for his standards. You know, a lot of his albums are kind of like, you know, they're known for not only being unique in their own right, but also standing out from one another. And he tries new things on each one of his albums. But this one kind of just felt like sort of half-baked ideas that were like from I Laid Down My Life For You, but it's not really exactly like I Laid Down My Life For You. It's a little bit evolved since then. Most of the evolution comes from these sort of like dubstep drops that he added to a lot of the tracks on the first half of this thing. Which is, I mean, even though they're not really that new, he kind of dabbled in that on Scaring the Hose a little bit, and I think he did it better on that album as well. Just overall, for an experimental rap project, I mean, it counts as experimental rap. Like, I'm not saying it's not experimental, but it's such like the most basic form of experimental rap that it's not really interesting to a lot of experimental rap fans. And the dilemma, I guess, for me is wondering whether or not it would make it more accessible to someone who's trying to get into experimental rap. The question is experimental rap that's worse at being everything that experimental music strives to be better for people that haven't really listened to experimental yet? I'm not really sure, but I honestly am kind of leaning towards no. I think, you know, I mean, there's definitely ways that you can sort of like ease into it, but I think ultimately this would not be a very good album to start listening to experimental music with. Definitely not a good album to start listening to JPEGMAFIA with. Although the fact that he kind of just used the same flow on every song might make it, you know, they might be able to like cling on to something. Like that's kind of like a consistent, sort of less chaotic thing. The flow itself, though, is pretty chaotic. Like it's usually like, it's very fast and sort of like drowned out by the loud beats. I don't think it's a bad flow. I honestly think a lot of the songs on the album sound pretty good. It's mostly just the fact that it becomes bland after all of them sound like pretty much the same. Also, it's probably his most misogynistic album to date. I don't know if that's a hot take, but I would argue it's even more so than like Black Ben Carson, just because the reason for it is less like, you know, it's less like political, and it just seems more so like he's become so much of a narcissist now that he just doesn't give a fuck. I don't know. That's not to say that he was ever like super respectful to women. I'm sure there are plenty of examples of him being disrespectful before this album. But I don't know. Something about it on this particular one just kind of rubbed me the wrong way for whatever reason. I can't really explain it. Also, the song The First Amendment. We got to talk about the First Amendment for a second. The one where he disses Charlie Kirk. Bro. I mean, I thought this song was hilarious. Don't get me wrong. But I would probably get disowned if anyone in my family heard me listening to that. I cannot imagine it would be good to play for someone that you just met. Even if they're like super left-leaning, hated Charlie Kirk. You know, like anyone with a decent amount of empathy is probably going to at least be like, what the fuck are we listening to right now? So, yeah, with all these things in mind, despite the fact that it's, you know, seen as not one of his more experimental albums, I definitely think it is one of the more scary ones. So, yeah, with that in mind, I'm going to put it in the boy, what the fuck are we listening to tier. And I'm actually going to put it above Scaring the House, which is saying something because that album is literally called Scaring the House. But anyway, yeah, that's my tier list for how scary these albums would be to the Huz if you played it in front of them. Once again, this is not meant to be a sort of misogynistic video implying that no women can ever enjoy JPEGMAFIA. I'm simply saying on a first date, when you first met someone, there are some albums that can maybe give some people a sort of off-putting vibe, which is not something that you want to do. So that's mainly what this tier list was ranking. Let me know if you agree or disagree Let me know what your favorite JPEGMAFIA album is, what your least favorite is, and fucking let me know what your favorite Drake album is or something. I don't know. Whatever you want to talk about related to music, talk about it. I really want to get more into talking about music. I've already actually made a lot of music videos, but I deleted all of them because they were trash. So I'm hoping this one is less trash, and any ones that I make in the future are less trash so that I don't have to delete them because they're embarrassing. Anyway, that's pretty much all I got to say. So, see ya.